which coach do you believe will be remembered as the greater coach? Is it Nick Saban or
Oh,
Bill Belichick? And I realize this is a very challenging question.
It's not challenging for me. I would tell you it's Nick Saban. That's not in any way to cast any kind of aspersions on Bill Belichick and what he's accomplished, and the detail to the level of excellence that went into everything that he did. I think it's one of the things that we have to recognize, and there's no easy way to slice this. Dan, Mina, let's just call it what it is. If you take into account the reports that have been out there the last few days and what is happening today and what is scheduled to transpire, I think it's clear that Bill Belichick wanted to stay and Mr. Kraft wanted to move in a different direction. Because obviously you heard the reports about how Bill Belichick was willing to cede responsibilities in terms of being the GM and evaluating and picking the players and just coach. But clearly Mr. Kraft felt otherwise, and that explains why, you're just letting him go out there and be a free agent coach, even though he's under contract, as opposed to seeking compensation from another team. You're not doing that. You're letting him go because he still wants to coach and he still wanted to be there. Well, why would you do that? Because since Tom Brady departed, what have you done? You've had 3 losing seasons in 4 years, 1 playoff appearance in 4 years. That might have something to do with it. And the level of success that Bill Belichick has been able to enjoy, not to take anything away from him, because it's more than just a quarterback that goes with a football team, and to be an overseer responsible for everything, there's a lot to be said about that. But the reality is it is inescapable to point out, or negligent to fail to point out, that the success came with Tom Brady as his quarterback. Even though there was 1 winning season with Matt Castle, once Tom Brady got injured, the vast majority of the success, the chunk of the success, came with Tom Brady as his quarterback. You juxtapose that with Nick Saban. Look at the multitude of quarterbacks, the multitude of programs, competing in the SEC, the #1 football conference in America, understanding what you have to do on a year in, year out basis. I already read the numbers to you. 10+ winning seasons, 16 straight years, a 117-18 record in SEC competition over 17 years, along with 6 national titles, a 201-29 record overall. I mean, are you kidding me? I look at all of those things and how the college football landscape has changed, having to go out there and recruit, having to get players, different players, every couple of years or so, constantly retooling and still being a perennial national championship contender. No matter how much the game has changed, you were still the standard. I can't say enough about Nick Saban. I get what Bill Belichick brings to the table, and I know the greatness is the greatness, no doubt about it. But there's greatness in Nick Saban too, and I'm going to roll with that.
Tough answer. I'm going to go with Bill Belichick. A couple of reasons why. One, to do it at the professional level when salary cap matters, and more often than not, your best players making more money than you. And in that world, getting those guys to be the Patriots were for 20 years the example of selfless football. You had so many guys that you got on your football team to become more detail-oriented than anybody else. And to play, out of respect for Coach Saban, more often than not, had the most talented team in college football every single week that they played. I don't know if we could say that over the consistency of Coach Belichick's 24 years. Now, they usually won most of their games because of the out-coaching or outplaying. A couple of things I said before, 17-0 in the playoffs when it comes to having won the turnover margin. If you made a mistake, he was the coach that was going to beat you. I think this as well. To win those Super Bowls, who Coach Belichick beat? I don't remember all of the people that he beat, but we have to remember they beat Sean McVay when Sean McVay had taken the NFL by storm. They have the greatest comeback in the history of the Super Bowl. They beat the greatest show on turf in the Los Angeles Rams, or the St. Louis Rams, excuse me. Mina probably knows the other 3 times that they won that are kind of making me miss and forget. But the teams that they beat and the people that they beat to win those championships, Super Bowl-wise, I think is one of those differentiators that puts Coach Belichick over the top.
when I look at the track record of Super Bowls, would Bill Belichick have had the success without Tom Brady? Absolutely not. But would Tom Brady have had all of those Super Bowls without Bill Belichick? Probably not either, because some of them were won on the backs of incredible defensive performances and game plans. And to me, it really is the sustained success over so many years that is near impossible to achieve in the NFL, that frankly, I don't think we will ever see again. It is a testament to Tom Brady's greatness. He's the greatest quarterback of all time, but also Bill Belichick's program building, the roster construction until recently, the way he drafted and developed players. Some of those offenses changed as well over the years. You remember in 2007, Dan, when they basically revolutionized the spread in the NFL. I mean, he has overseen so many different eras of football and done it at such a high level. I do feel like right now at this moment, there's a little bit of recency bias maybe creeping into how we think about his career in New England. I understand we're comparing him to Saban, so that's a very high bar. The last couple of years have been bad, but even in these last couple of years, the defense has still been great. I have no doubt that he can continue to coach at an extremely high level because of that. He just made a grievous error when it came to coaching. I think it's probably the biggest mistake of his career with the offensive coordinators last year, and then a bunch of missteps in terms of drafting offensive players.
When you're talking about their records, their accomplishments, Dan, Des, I get it. And certainly that is something that we have to celebrate because they're two of the greatest coaches we've ever seen in our lifetime. But on this particular day, whereas it is a celebration for Nick Saban, I don't view it the same way with Bill Belichick because I think Bill Belichick still wanted to stay in New England. And I think that ultimately he's having to do something he really didn't want to do, but he's receptive to because he's about accountability. If we know what we've seen from New England over the last couple of years at the very least is pretty unacceptable, then think about who we're talking about here. Who would know it better than Nick Saban? Think about what he's accomplished. Think about all the work he puts in. Think about the commitment, the dedication, what the final results have reaped. Think about all of those things. And then think about him having to look in the mirror fresh off of a 4-win season. That's tough. And so, again, we can celebrate him in terms of his resume, his accomplishments, his greatness. No doubt we can revere this man because he was so phenomenal. And we still believe that he is in some respects, particularly if he gets in the right situation with a quarterback. But I think we need to remember that this is a day they're just class personified and they're handling it right. But all indications point to Bill Belichick wanted to stay.
Des,
and Mr. Kraft is saying something otherwise.
Before you jump in there, let me just push back on that really quick, though, Stephen A. I agree with the sentiment that you're saying, but I think this might be one of those situations where it's a blessing in disguise. We know he'll potentially catch Don Shula, and I don't know if he'd get another Super Bowl in New England with the current situation. And now if he could potentially get one of these teams with a real quarterback that's in the playoffs and they take a chance on him. No, I'm just saying for his legacy, when we look at his legacy cemented, don't get me wrong, but when we look at the Tom Brady, how he went and won on his own, if Bill's to do that, I think it's the right thing.
But Molly, I'm talking about him. I get what you're coming from.
Yeah.
And as we look from the periphery, but he, who is a born winner, who's a 6-time champion as a head coach, he who literally, some would say he invented the word accountability, for crying out loud, as dogged as he was about that. He has to look at himself and see that the New England Patriots as an organization is saying it's time to move on. Just a couple of days ago, there were reports he wants to stay and he's willing to cede, responsibilities as the GM. Think about that for a second. We can look at it that way. How's he looking at it?
One of the things I really loved about Nick Saban was to watch his teams during the offseason, and he would bring in various speakers, and he would be sitting front and center, always taking notes, no matter who the speaker was, always trying to learn, trying to get better, and showing them by example that you never want to rest on your laurels. You never want to be content. You want to get at least 1% better every day. And he showed that by bringing in various speakers, letting his team hear different stories, different perspectives from different people who were extremely successful in whatever endeavors life held for them. So the way that he approached, to me, the big picture with these student athletes, I always respected that about Nick Saban. I always looked on Instagram or social media, and I would say, okay, it's the off season. Let's see who Nick Saban brings in to speaks to his team, and let's see what message they receive because he understands the big picture.
Yeah, Des, you talking about that even makes me smile because we know that's like a real thing in life, you know, and I think, again, those two coaches epitomize that. One thing on Coach Belichick, I don't think he's chasing a quarterback. I do think he coaches again in the NFL. I do not believe he's chasing a quarterback. He built the greatest run ever without a superstar at quarterback. Tom Brady ended up being the greatest quarterback ever. For me, the last thing I'm going to say about the situation is they're two great coaches. They're two of the greatest leaders ever. I have, for years now, written down some of my favorite messages that both of them have shared. Number one, there's no secrets to success. I think both of those guys drill that home, and we all can take that. Number two, every day matters. That's kind of what Des is talking about with the messaging that Coach Saban does with his players. Number three, discipline is the foundation to success. Not talent, not motivation, but daily discipline. And four, and it's probably my favorite one, excellence has a price. Most of us want excellence. We're just scared of it. And I think both of these coaches had a unique way of removing that fear from their players so those people and players started to pay that price for excellence. And I think some of those messages and lessons are impactful, important for all of us,
All
athlete or
walks
not.
of life. Yeah, they're phenomenal. And
Yeah.
it's a mindset and it's a lifestyle and it's consistency and resiliency. Absolutely. What's your best Saban story that you can share with us on television?
We were on, I think it was the Capital One Bowl, my junior year. No, actually, it was after we won the national championship my junior year. And we were going somewhere, man. And we were on the bus, and I was talking to him because this was when the rumors had started about him leaving for the NFL. And, you know, I was like, Coach, what's up? What you doing? And we had a couple guys that left early as juniors, Michael Clayton, my former teammate that passed away, Marquise Hill, who actually played for the New England Patriots. But I asked him, I said, if you leaving, I'm leaving. And he was like, I'm gonna see it through with my babies, was his response. And he looked at us that way, that 2001 recruiting class that came into LSU, because he told us flat out, you guys are going to change the trajectory of how people think about this school. That was his message throughout for a lot of us. And I just remember sitting on that bus, and it's hard to trust people in this industry, especially when you start talking about coaching, you start talking about money, opportunities that present themselves. I was heavily considering Miami, and Butch Davis left and went to the Cleveland Browns after having conversations with them about him not leaving to go to the NFL. But Nick Saban told me on the bus, he said, I'm going to see this through with you guys. And he was a man of his word. His character has always rung loudly with me. And for him to turn down an opportunity and put it on hold for 1 year for us as players who would have been fine either way, but we wouldn't have had our coach, is the story that really resonates with me and tells you about the true character of who he is, which lets me know that this decision was very difficult to lead them young men's faces and tell them that he was going to wrap it up and go into retirement.
Yeah, and Stephen A., before you jump in here, Dan had just told me, which I find very interesting, Nick Saban was the one that switched you, Marcus, from tight end to defense, and we all know the rest is history, and you went on to have a wonderful NFL career. Stephen A.?
Were you surprised that he decided to retire yesterday, Marcus? And by the way, do you believe that's permanent? Do you believe that's permanent, or he might end up in the NFL? What are your thoughts?
One, I think it's permanent, S.A., but I was absolutely surprised. Dan and I had just got off NFL Live, and I talked about the competitive nature of Bill Belichick, Nick Saban, and Pete Carroll. And I just did not believe that he would leave after losing in the semifinals of a college football playoff. But I think the landscape got him, and I've been hearing you guys talk about it, more so of the transfer portal than NIL. He's always been a big proponent of players being able to maximize their earning potential and opportunities at the advantages that football provides. Shoot, when he was recruiting me at LSU, he told me, don't make a 4-year decision, make a 40-year decision. So he's always had that part in mind. But I think the turbulence of how you have to recruit players and what comes with it was a part of this decision.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised by it. I was taken aback. You've heard rumors of this for years, that it was always going to be something potentially happening in the offseason. So you're still taken aback that it actually happened. I think the great thing is this. I still believe he's going to be a part of our college football life. I know he's not going to be the head coach at Alabama, but hopefully he continues to be a part, maybe at this network of college football and the fabric of it on a weekly basis.
Marcus, we got to go to break, and you have one word. One word. I want you to answer this, okay? Harder to replace, Saban or Belichick?
Nick Saban.
There we go. That was 2 words. You should have just said Saban, but I'll take it.